You guys know why Bernie don't talk about Julian Assange, AOC? And me and Misty, we talk about this all the time. Like, there's a big coordinated effort among the Bernie wing to get people to not support Julian Assange. Like, people used to attack Misty because she cared about Julian Assange too much. You know what I mean?
Right.
And one thing I see, and you guys just gotta trust me on this because I don't have receipts to prove to you guys. But that was the messaging that came from the Bernie left. The liberals is they say, oh, well, technically Assange is now a journalist. And like, that shit will blow my mind that anyone who considers himself left of center would say something like that. It's so elitist. And it does not serve us. It only serves empire. So probably 2 more segments today. I want to show this video. You guys know we got freestyle with my brother Keaton tonight. But this is like one of the only segments that I found on Julian Assange. You had a giant hearing. They all talk about Navalny, that Nazi traitor scum. You know, the person who sold out Russia to the CIA and the MI6. You know, crimes that's illegal in literally every nation that ever existed. Like, you guys know I'm a fan of history. You know what the fucking Roman Empire would do to you? They would call you as a spy. This kind of tortures they did to people, fam. Every empire ever will go after you for doing what Navalny did. Julian Assange is Australian, exposing the crimes of another country, and now they're using the Espionage Act to go after him. Do you guys have any idea how crazy that is? Meanwhile, on MSNBC, look how they talk about this insanity, this insane crackdown on free speech. And feel free to interrupt, Ken. They say not a long clip, but this I have to. This is like the only thing you're gonna get.
Michael, it's good to see you as we speak again, remarkably about Julian Assange all these years later, after those years held up in the Ecuadorian embassy, behind bars in the UK as well, facing potential extradition. It was feared to Sweden at one point. Is this the end of the line for Julian Assange?
It looks like it. I mean, he does have the option of trying to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. He could file an appeal on that if he gets turned down here. But it's also more than likely that if the High Court in Britain turns this request down, they'll just send him back to the U.S. and that appeal might be moved.
And Michael, this is a complex topic, right? Because sometimes First Amendment fights sometimes deal with protecting the rights of people who are viewed as unsavory by a lot of different people here. If Julian Assange ultimately does get extradited to the United States, what is the state of that conversation?
Whenever the corporate media does cover Julian Assange, they actually bring this up all the time, believe it or not. You're not going to find this segment often. But when they do have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, Keaton. When they say, hey, I know we find this guy unsavory and never explain why.
Yeah.
He's a better journalist than you? Is that why you find him unsavory? But they say, hey, we know we're supposed to hate this guy technically, but is this kind of dangerous, bro? Like, they always have to acknowledge it, which shows that they know, and they still push for his prosecution. Feel free to chime in, Keaton. We continue the video.
No, it's okay. We're good.
Here among American lawmakers as it relates to Julian Assange, and what should we expect would happen to him here?
This is a case about which people, particularly in the press, are profoundly ambivalent. On the one hand,
he said the people in the press are ambivalent, meaning they don't really care. They're indecisive on this issue. And he's going to explain why. And it's amazing. It's amazing. And it shows that these corporate journalists, their job is to protect the establishment, not defend the profession of journalism. We are just YouTube bros, like according to Dr. Cornel West, but we defend the profession of journalism more harshly than corporate establishment journalists that people like Dr. Cornel West probably deeply respect, like Brother Anderson Cooper. You know what I mean?
Let me guess I doubt he's going to say this, but my guess would be many of us work for Comcast, and we don't want to get fired and replaced with another whore if we say we support Julian Assange. So that's why we're really ambivalent, because that's why you're actually ambivalent. You're actually ambivalent because the media has been consolidated to the point where you are owned by the same corporations that own everyone and everything else. And so if you say the wrong thing, they will replace you with someone who will say the right thing. That's why they are ambivalent, because anyone who takes this job seriously is nowhere near ambivalent about this.
So of course they gotta use that POC. I was like, all right, am I thinking? All right, I'll Google this.
My
damn
guess
word.
is that's not what
you
he
guys
said.
know I'm an idiot. You guys know I'm an idiot. So I'm like, I'll Google this shit. I go like, all right, ambivalent. I think I know what that means. So ambivalent, having mixed feelings or contradictory ideas about something or some. Bro, what? I didn't Google this when I first saw this video, but I'm glad I did because I think I was kind of on the right track. Here's the definition, because you gotta know my dumb ass. I know you guys, a lot of people probably rolling their eyes at me right now. But here's the definition, because I want to make sure I do my analysis right. Having mixed feelings or contradictory ideas about something or someone. So you guys, he's admitting that corporate journalists have contradictory ideas about Julian Assange. On one end, they believe in freedom of the press, but he went too hard in the paint on freedom of the press, and it makes them uncomfortable. And he's gonna explain that. I'm gonna play the video. I'm gonna play the question again. I'm gonna let you guys see the full thing in context, and then we can chime in.
Because sometimes First Amendment fights sometimes deal with protecting the rights of people who are viewed as unsavory by a lot of different people here. If Julian Assange ultimately does get extradited to the United States, what is the state of that conversation here among American lawmakers as it relates to Julian Assange, and what should we expect would happen to him here?
This is a case about which people, particularly in the press, are profoundly ambivalent. On the one hand, some of the charges against Assange do relate to disclosure of national defense information. That's the kind of charge that could be used against the New York Times, the Washington Post.
Okay. All right. So he's saying those are the bullshit ones.
Some of the groundbreaking reporting that was done, especially during the Bush era.
So now listen to this answer, because this is why I want to show you guys this clip. So they know, fam. He, in the first part of his answer, is explaining to you guys why this is dangerous to journalism, but then he's going to spin it, of course. Now I'm going to play a part. I want you guys to listen.
Times, the Washington Post, NBC News. I mean, you look at some of the groundbreaking reporting that was done, especially during the Bush era, the disclosure of CIA black site prisons or surveillance by of American citizens by the Bush administration. Those were classified documents and information, but won prizes for exposing arguable wrongdoing by the U.S. government. So on the one hand, that's one reason why many of us in the press are ambivalent about the.
What are you talking about?
So you just described a very serious problem. The idea that he like, man, technically, he like if you want to get in the weeds.
I thought he was going to say. I thought he was going to say. Okay, so on the one hand, because he disclosed that important information, and that information could have been disclosed by any other journalist working for any other newspaper, that's a reason why we oppose his prosecution. And then I thought he was going to come up with some other reason why he would favor the prosecution. That's what ambivalent means, weighing both sides. But why would that alone make you ambivalent? Yeah, I'm very curious to see the rest.
Let's continue this argument.
I can't imagine what he's going to say next. Now I have no idea.
You would think that people in the press would be extremely passionate about this, because he just explained. And I wanted to show you guys this because I'm showing you guys that they're not dumb. And this is the point that I kept making when people say I was smarter than Julian Reed. I disagree. I'm not. They know these issues. They willingly sell out. So this guy is explaining why standing for Julian Assange is so important, because he explained that even groundbreaking journalism from Washington Post and New York Times and other groundbreaking investigative reporting came from leaked secret documents that the government didn't want us to know about. That's the definition of journalism. Now watch how he said, but now there's going to be a giant but though. And now he's going to mention why he's ambivalent. He got these contradictory views on this issue. Now this is incredible. Now I actually know what that word means. So let's listen to the rest of this argument. I think it's going to blow your mind, Keaton.
Government. So on the one hand, that's one reason why many of us in the press are ambivalent about these charges. On the other hand, there's also charges against Assange for doing things that most journalists would not do, such as trying.
What do you mean most journalists won't do? But I'll let him finish his thought.
Yeah,
such as trying to get trying to help Chelsea Manning crack a computer password and inducing her to steal classified documents and give them to him.
So you criticizing him for being a better journalist than you? That's really what journalists do. What the fuck?
There was they're referring to a very brief text exchange where Julian recommends a password guess to hack into a system or to access a system or even to hack into a system. He recommended a password. There was no hack of such system. The hack never happened. That's why nobody's even referencing this supposed hack. That never happened.
I'm glad that you clarified that, Keaton. Because you guys see how they overwhelm me with lies.
She was giving him information. She wanted to get into some system. I forget the details. Misty would be much better to talk about this than I would. But he said on a text message, try this one or something like that. That's it. That's not a hacker. That does not make you a hacker, especially when no such hack ever took place.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. But I remember also hearing it, because I'm sure, because you know how they overwhelm me with lies. This is another lie, obviously. You just rebuked it. But I remember hearing Glenn Greenwald explain before, because obviously he's a award-winning journalist. Even if a journalist coerce their source to get information, that's not illegal. I remember hearing Glenn Greenwald explain. So even if he wasn't lying, what he's saying is not illegal. You getting information from a source is not illegal. That is what journalists have done since the beginning of time. Even though he's bullshitting and he's lying. But let's continue.
My guess would be, and like I said, I'm going to put a caveat here. I'm not a lawyer. But my guess would be, let's say Julian Assange had access to information that was privileged, and he decided to use a source as a proxy to cover his tracks so that he was the one actually infiltrating these systems and getting information. He was just using a so-called source as a go-between so that he could claim that what he's doing is privileged under freedom of speech, First Amendment, journalistic norms. You may have a case there, but he had no such access. He had no access to any of this. Chelsea Manning was the source. And so this brief exchange of messages that he's referencing here is just a non-starter, to the point where I haven't even heard anybody bring that up in a very long time, because it's just an unserious charge. There never was any hack. He never had any access to this information. And so that's just nonsense.
Dude, being a Julian Assange, a.k.a. a free speech supporter, is very exhausting, because they throw so many lies at Julian Assange. Dude, it's hard to remember how to, rebuke every single one. They overwhelm you with bullshit. You know, exactly like the Zionists do.
I thought they gave up on that one. I haven't heard that one in a very long time. That was a throwback.
Yeah, I'm like, shit. What? Misty. That's why people like Misty is so important. A lot of people who very hyper focus on Julian Assange, the Julian Assange thing, and they lie so much about it. It's so important. It's almost, we need people like that, because we need people who know this case up and down, because they shamelessly lie about the man so many ways. And they use the strategy of overwhelming you with bullshit. But let's finish his argument. I'll go back a little bit for context. But he's playing first. Remember, he's playing why Julian Assange is a journalist first, and then he essentially says, "Oh, but he goes too hard in the paint, essentially, and it makes some of us in the establishment uncomfortable." That's the argument, essentially, what you're gonna say in the second half. Let's continue.
Such as trying to get Chelsea.
I'll go back 4 seconds. I think right here is a good part.
Against Assange for doing things that most journalists would not do, such as trying to get trying to help Chelsea Manning crack a computer password and inducing her to steal classified documents and give them to him. And also some of the disclosures that Assange made, while it had valuable information, it also had the name of U.S. informants and put their lives at risk. So that's something that a lot of people are uncomfortable defending. So we'll just have to see if he gets brought back to the U.S., which I think is likely at this point, how this plays out, how strong the Garland Justice Department pushes it. They've locked in, and they're continuing to argue he should be extradited. So it would be quite a trial in the U.S. if he's brought back.
Yeah, after all these years, there's still a lot of mixed opinions as it relates to Julian Assange.
Mixed opinions. Well, that's what they have to make this complicated. Just like what's happening now, Israel, Gaza. They have to make it complicated. They have to both sides it. They have to fence it, right? Because they have to create a sort of off ramp
for their audience. So if it goes a certain way, right, if this horrible thing happens and this guy is tortured to death in prison for doing journalism, they need their audience to be able to process that and to be okay with that. So they say, well, it's a complicated case. I mean, on the one hand, he shouldn't be prosecuted, but on the other hand, it's valid. And as for this, once again, where is there any evidence that anyone's lives were put at risk? Were there attempts made on the lives of these people whose names he published? Is there any evidence whatsoever that they were that they were ever in any danger?
Well said. I'll let the clip finish. And another reason I'm doing the segment, we're gonna wrap up with this just because time. Because I'm gonna show you guys the reactions of the establishment regarding Joe Biden committing one of the most egregious offenses to free speech. It will send a chilling message to journalism all around the world. Look at how nonchalantly they talking about this. We ambivalent. We got mixed emotions about that. Now I'm gonna show you guys how they talk about Navalny. Now I cannot emphasize enough that there's absolutely no comparison. You have Navalny, who is a traitor to his country, who sold out his people to the CIA and MI6, and he's a white supremacist Nazi scum. Versus Julian Assange, who's not even American, he's Australian, who exposed war crimes. But they pretend Putin is the worst person of all time. Because Navalny died because he was a sickly man. And because he was a traitor. Versus Biden killing Assange. Oh, we got mixed emotions. Oh, we ambivalent. So I'm going to show you guys one more segment after this, but I'll let this finish.
There's still a lot of mixed opinions as it relates to Julian Assange and the drama that we've seen play out over most of the last 15 years. Michael Isikoff, it's nice to see you. Appreciate you taking time to speak to us.
And so the funny thing is, the only parallels between the Assange and Navalny case is how the establishment talks about the same underlining issue, because they will say Putin killed Navalny because Navalny got sick while he was in prison for being traitorous scum. Like most people would, because if you sold your country out to a hostile foreign government, you most likely get 15 to life, you most likely gonna die in prison. That's what happened to Navalny. So they were like, don't get it twisted. Putin killed Navalny because he sent him to rot in prison. So that's them acknowledging, because they tell the truth about how they really feel about world affairs based on how they talk about their enemies. That's them admitting that Biden and the United States and every single president has essentially ordered the death of Julian Assange. They can't put a bullet in his skull because they're actually good propagandists. They're good at managing the empire. So you can't do those executions to get away with it no more. So what you do is you stall and murder him slowly without them getting due process. So this is 15 years. You got this hearing, they delayed again.
Yeah. And I'll just remind everyone, conspiring with a foreign intelligence service to overthrow your government, that's not protected under the First Amendment. Yes. The way what Julian Assange did. Now, the reason we mention the First Amendment is because obviously, the United States is the one bringing these charges, and the UK is just being our lapdog by holding him for us. Julian Assange is not charged with a crime in the UK, but he's being detained in the UK.